My wife kept talking about her work husband and how funny he was. She said it was just a joke. A month later, I caught them having romantic dinner on our anniversary. I filed for divorce the next day and sold the house she loved without telling her. She was shocked when she had to move out within a week. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. Patrick Calder's eyes opened at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before his alarm. He stared at the ceiling fan, watching the blades cut slow circles through the darkness. The pattern never changed. Wake, rise, function. Outside, the lake waited just beyond the window, breathing its cold morning breath across the water. He slipped from bed without disturbing Cheryl. Her breathing was steady, deep, the kind of sleep that came easy to people with clear consciences. Patrick padded barefoot across the hardwood, feeling the grain beneath his feet, the slight give where the floor settled over time. Every creak had a story. He knew them all. The kitchen was his sanctuary in these early hours. He filled the coffee maker with water from the tap, measured ground with the precision he brought to everything. While the machine hissed and gurgled, he stood at the back door and watched the lake emerge from night into morning. Gray became blue. Darkness became definition. The water held secrets, but it never lied about what it was. Cedar Ridge, Wisconsin was the kind of town where people still waved when they passed on the road, where the hardware store owner knew your name and your father's name before that. Patrick had grown up here, left for college, and returned because some places fit you like a worn coat. Comfortable. Necessary. He took his coffee black, standing at the counter, scrolling through their joint bank account on his phone. Numbers told the truth when words wouldn't. Deposits, withdrawals, the ebb and flow of two lives running parallel. Nothing unusual. Not yet. The hinge on the back door had been catching for a week. Patrick set down his coffee and retrieved his toolbox from the garage, working in the quiet morning light. The screwdriver felt right in his hand, solid, purposeful. 3 turns on each screw, a drop of oil on the pin, test the swing. Smooth now. Fixed. His father had taught him that. Fix what you can control. Prepare for what you can't. Patrick heard Cheryl before he saw her. The soft pad of her feet, the rustle of fabric, the click of a light switch. When he turned, she was standing in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for work. She wore the blue blouse he'd bought her last Christmas, and that perfume she saved for important days. Sharp and sweet, like fruit on the edge of turning. "You're up early," he said, returning the toolbox to its place. Big presentation. She moved to the counter, poured cereal into a bowl with careful precision. Wanted to get a head start. Patrick nodded, refilling his coffee. They moved around each other with the practiced ease of 10 years. She reached for the milk as he stepped aside. He grabbed a spoon from the drawer she'd just closed. A choreography so familiar it felt like breathing. "Oh," Cheryl said, her voice bright, almost too bright. "You would love him." Patrick looked up from his coffee. "Who?" "Trevor. From work." She laughed, high and quick. "He's hilarious. We've been calling each other work husband and work wife. You know, like a joke." The phrase hung in the air between them like smoke. Work husband. Patrick took a sip of coffee, let the heat burn down his throat. "That's what you call each other?" "It's just a joke, Patrick. Relax." Cheryl waved her spoon dismissively. "Everyone at the office does it. It's harmless fun." He said nothing. He often said nothing when the important words arrived. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "When something smells wrong, boy, you don't keep breathing it in. You stop. You measure the room." Patrick stored the phrase away in the careful catalog he kept. "Work husband. Just a joke. Relax." Cheryl finished her cereal, rinsed the bowl, kissed him on the cheek with lips that tasted like strawberries and milk. "I might be late tonight. Trevor and I are working on the quarterly reports." "Drive safe," Patrick said. The door closed. The house settled into silence. Patrick stood at the sink, watching her car disappear down the gravel drive, dust rising in small clouds behind the tires. Just a joke. He'd heard that before, in different contexts from different people. His college roommate had said that before he flunked out. His cousin had said that before the DUI. Words people used when they wanted you to ignore what your gut already knew. Patrick finished his coffee, washed both their cups, and placed them in the drying rack with the handles facing the same direction. Order mattered. Systems mattered. When everything else fell apart, you had what you built. The pattern started small, the way Rod always does. 3 days after the work husband comment, Patrick noticed Cheryl checking her phone during dinner. Not unusual by itself. Everyone checked their phones. But she smiled at the screen with a softness he recognized. It was the smile she used to give him. "Something funny?" he asked. "Just Trevor being Trevor." She set the phone face down on the table. "He sent me a meme about our boss." Patrick cut his chicken, chewed, swallowed. "What does Trevor do?" "Sales. He's new, transferred from a Milwaukee office about 2 months ago." Cheryl's voice carried an energy it hadn't held in weeks. "He's really turned the team around. Everyone loves working with him. Sounds like a good addition." "He really is." The conversation moved elsewhere. Bills to pay, a cousin's wedding invitation, whether they should replace the dock boards before winter. Normal things. Safe things. But Patrick filed it away. Trevor. Sales. Milwaukee. 2 months. A week later, Cheryl stopped wearing her wedding ring to work. He noticed on a Thursday morning. She was braiding her hair in the bathroom mirror, the ring sitting on the counter beside her makeup bag. When she finished, she reached for her earrings but left the ring where it lay. "Forget something?" Patrick leaned against the doorframe. Cheryl glanced at the ring. "Oh, it's been catching on files at work. Scratching everything. I'll put it back on when I get home." Makes sense. But she didn't put it back on when she got home. The ring stayed on the bathroom counter, gathering dust in the space where the band touched porcelain. Patrick said nothing. He watched. 2 weeks later, Cheryl was folding laundry on the couch while Patrick read a book in his chair. She laughed suddenly, holding her phone in one hand and a t-shirt in the other. "What's funny?" he asked without looking up. "Trevor he has this way of describing people. He called our manager a motivational poster that gained sentience and learned cruelty." She snorted. "It's so accurate." Patrick turned a page. "He sounds creative." "He is. He's actually really smart. Did I tell you he has an MBA from Northwestern?" "You mentioned it." She hadn't, but Patrick didn't correct her. "And he volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends." "How sweet is that?" Patrick closed his book, marking his place with his thumb. "You talk about him a lot." Cheryl looked up, defensive already. "Do I? I don't think I do. Work husband, right? Just a joke." "Exactly." She resumed folding, movements quick and sharp. "You're reading into things that aren't there. I'm listening to what's there." "Well, maybe you're listening too hard." The silence that followed felt different than their usual quiet. It had edges. Patrick returned to his book, but the words blurred together. Across the room, Cheryl folded clothes with aggressive precision. Each shirt snapped straight before being placed in the basket. That night, Patrick lay awake while Cheryl slept. Moonlight spilled through the window, painting silver stripes across the ceiling. He thought about the ring on the bathroom counter, the phone calls that ended when he entered rooms, the way she'd stopped asking about his day. Small things, but small things built into big truths. His father had owned a construction company. Patrick grew up watching him frame houses, pour foundations, sweat through Wisconsin summers, turning blueprints into reality. One afternoon, when Patrick was 16, they'd been inspecting a foundation that looked perfect from the outside. "See this crack?" His father had pointed to a hairline fracture in the concrete. "Barely visible. Most people wouldn't notice it. But water will find it. Ice will expand it. In 5 years, this whole corner will need to be torn out and repoured. Can't we just seal it?" "We could, but that's putting a bandage on a bullet wound. Sometimes you need to acknowledge the damage and start over." Patrick had helped them jackhammer that corner. It took 2 days of hard work, but the new foundation held. He turned onto his side, watching Cheryl's silhouette rise and fall with her breathing. 10 years of marriage. A decade of mornings and nights, of inside jokes and shared meals, of building something he thought was solid. But he felt the crack forming, and he knew where water would go. The kitchen calendar hung on the wall beside the refrigerator, every date marked in Cheryl's precise handwriting. Doctor appointments, oil changes, birthdays, And there, circled in red with a star drawn beside it, their 10th anniversary. October 17th. Patrick had planned for this date for months. He'd made reservations at the Lakeview Inn, a quiet place with good food and better views, where they could watch the sunset over the water and remember why they'd chosen each other in the first place. He'd bought a bracelet, sterling silver with a small opal, her birthstone, that she'd admired in a shop window last spring but insisted was too expensive. 10 years deserved to be celebrated. 10 years meant something. The night before their anniversary, Patrick sat at his desk in the small office off the living room, reviewing their finances. It was something he did monthly, keeping track of investments, retirement accounts, the slow accumulation of security. Numbers didn't lie. They didn't make jokes or call people by names that didn't belong to them. He clicked through their joint checking account. Nothing unusual. Their savings. Stable. The retirement funds. Growing steadily. His personal account. The one he'd maintained since before the marriage. Untouched, exactly as he'd structured it. Patrick had always believed in preparation. When they'd gotten engaged, Cheryl had rolled her eyes at the prenuptial agreement his lawyer drafted. "This is so unromantic," she'd said, flipping through the pages. "What? You don't trust me?" "It's not about trust. It's about being responsible. It's about planning for failure. It's about planning for reality." She'd signed it anyway, laughing it off as one of his quirks. Patrick the planner. Patrick the pragmatist. Patrick who needed everything organized and documented and secured. Now, sitting in the quiet office with only the desk lamp burning, Patrick opened the document again. He read through each clause with fresh eyes, seeing the careful language his lawyer had constructed. The house, purchased before their marriage and held in an LLC Patrick had formed for tax purposes, remained his property. Cheryl had rights to any appreciation in value during the marriage, but the asset itself was protected. At the time, it had seemed like standard practice. Now it seemed like foresight. Patrick closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. Through the window, he could see the lake, dark and quiet under the stars. Somewhere out there, fish moved through cold water, following patterns set by instinct and necessity. They didn't second-guess. They didn't rationalize. They simply were. From the bedroom, he heard Cheryl's phone buzz. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. The sound that meant messages, not calls. The sound that had been happening more and more after she thought he was asleep. Patrick stood and walked to the bedroom doorway. Cheryl lay on her side, phone screen glowing in her hands, her face lit with that soft smile again. She was typing quickly, deleting, retyping. The kind of care you took when words mattered. "It's late," Patrick said from the doorway. Cheryl startled, nearly dropping the phone. "God, you scared me." "Sorry. Just heading to bed." She locked the screen quickly. "Yeah, me too. Just checking tomorrow's schedule." "Right. The big project." "Exactly." She placed the phone on the nightstand, face down. "I might be late tomorrow. I know it's our anniversary, but this deadline is insane." Patrick stood very still. "Late? Maybe. I'll try to wrap up early, but I can't promise anything. I made reservations at the Lakeview Inn. 7 o'clock. Cheryl's face did something complicated. "Oh, I forgot you'd. Can we push it back? Or maybe do something this weekend instead? It's our 10th anniversary." "I know, and I'm sorry, but work is work. You understand, right?" Patrick understood many things in that moment. He understood that his wife had just chosen a work project over their anniversary. He understood that her phone had buzzed 3 times with messages she didn't want him to see. He understood that the wedding ring still sat on the bathroom counter, gathering dust. Most of all, he understood that cracks didn't heal themselves. "Sure," he said. "We can do it this weekend." Cheryl's relief was visible. "Thank you. You're the best." She reached for him, pulling him down for a kiss that felt obligatory, mechanical. Patrick returned it with the same energy, then climbed into bed beside her. She turned away, curling into her pillow, and within minutes her breathing deepened into sleep. Patrick stared at the ceiling. The fan turned its slow circles. In the darkness, he made decisions with the cold clarity that came when emotion finally stepped aside for fact. He would not cancel the reservation. He would go to that restaurant tomorrow night, but not with his wife. He would go to find the truth. And when he found it, because he would find it, he would act with the same precision he brought to fixing hinges and reviewing finances and building foundations that lasted. Some things could be sealed and saved. Others needed to be torn out and replaced. Patrick knew which category this fell into now. Tomorrow would bring clarity. Tomorrow would bring endings. Tomorrow, the lake would still be there, honest and gray-blue, reflecting back exactly what you gave it. You just needed to survive until morning. October 17th dawned gray and cold, the kind of autumn day that promised rain but never quite delivered. Patrick woke at his usual time, made his usual coffee, and went through his usual routines with unusual calm. Cheryl left early, kissing him on the cheek and promising to text when she knew what time she'd be done. "I'll try my best to make it work," she'd said, already halfway out the door. "I know you will." Patrick spent the morning completing tasks with methodical precision. He changed the oil in his truck. He cleaned the garage. He transferred files from their shared computer to an encrypted external drive. Tax returns, insurance policies, bank statements. Just copies. Just preparation. His father's voice again. Hope for the best, but have documentation for the worst. Around noon, he called the Lakeview Inn and confirmed a reservation. Yes, still for 2 people. 7 o'clock. Window table overlooking the water. Then Patrick drove into Milwaukee. The city rose from the landscape like something necessary but not quite wanted, concrete and glass interrupting the natural roll of Wisconsin hills. Patrick navigated through afternoon traffic with the windows down, letting cold air keep him focused. He'd looked up the restaurant the night before, after Cheryl's phone had finally stopped buzzing and she'd fallen asleep. Trevor's social media had been easy to find. People shared too much these days, tagged themselves in places, documented every meal. 3 weeks ago, Trevor had posted a photo of a pasta dish with the location tagged, Rossetti's, an Italian place along the Milwaukee River, known for romantic ambience and discretion. Patrick drove past it twice, studying the layout. Valet parking in front, large windows facing the river walk, warm lighting that would be perfect for an intimate dinner. The kind of place where you took someone you wanted to impress. He parked 3 blocks away and walked, hands in his pockets, looking like any other person out for an evening stroll. The temperature had dropped with the sun, and his breath misted in the air. Along the river, couples walked hand in hand, and somewhere a street musician played guitar, the notes carrying on the cold breeze. Patrick checked his watch. 6:47 p.m. He positioned himself across the street from Rossetti's, partially hidden by a bus shelter, and waited. At 6:52, a silver sedan pulled up to the valet. The driver's door opened, and Cheryl stepped out. She wore the black dress, the one Patrick had bought her for his company's holiday party 2 years ago, the one that made him unable to focus on conversations because he kept looking at her. She'd pulled her hair back, revealing the earrings he'd given her for her birthday. And on her left hand, catching the light from the restaurant windows, was her wedding ring. Put back on for this. Patrick's chest tightened, but his hands stayed steady. He pulled out his phone and took photos. Click. Cheryl handing her keys to the valet. Click. Cheryl checking her reflection in the restaurant window. Click. Cheryl walking inside with a smile that belonged to anticipation, to excitement, to someone going somewhere that mattered. Patrick waited. At 7:03, another car arrived. A blue BMW, leased according to the plate frame. The driver was mid-30s, tall, wearing a suit jacket over dark jeans. Confident. Comfortable. Trevor Ames walked into Rossetti's like he owned the night. Patrick gave them 5 minutes, then crossed the street. The hostess greeted him with professional warmth. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Just looking for someone," Patrick said, moving past her with the kind of purposeful stride that discouraged questions. The restaurant was exactly what he'd expected. Low lighting, candles on every table, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. The tables near the windows offered views of the river, dark water reflecting city lights in fractured patterns. Patrick found them at a corner table. Private. Intimate. Trevor sat with his back to Patrick, leaning forward as he talked. Cheryl faced Patrick's direction, but she wasn't looking toward the entrance. She was looking at Trevor with complete focus, the kind of attention that erased the rest of the room. Patrick moved closer, angling himself behind a decorative column that provided cover. He raised his phone again and took photos. Trevor's hand on the table, inches from Cheryl's. Cheryl laughing at something Trevor said, her whole face alight. The wine glasses, the candles, the intimacy that needed no physical contact to be completely clear. A waiter approached their table with menus. Patrick zoomed in, capturing the timestamp on his phone's display. 7:14 p.m. October 17th, their 10th anniversary. He took one more photo, wide angle, showing both of them framed in the warm glow of the restaurant. And then he left. Outside, the cold air hit him like a slap. Patrick walked back to his truck with measured steps, not running, not hurrying, just moving with the certainty of someone who had confirmed what he needed to know. His phone held the evidence, the truth. The crack in the foundation had become a chasm. He sat in his truck for a long moment, engine running, heat beginning to fill the cab. Across the city, his wife was having a romantic anniversary dinner with another man. She was wearing the dress he'd bought her, the earrings he'd given her, the wedding ring she'd stopped wearing to work. She was celebrating 10 years of marriage by betraying it completely. Patrick's hands gripped the steering wheel, not shaking, not trembling, just holding on to something solid while his world restructured itself around a new reality. He'd expected this. Some part of him had known since the moment she'd said work husband with that too bright laugh. But knowing and confirming were different animals. One lived in suspicion, the other lived in fact. Patrick pulled out his phone and scrolled through the photos. Clear, undeniable. He uploaded them to his encrypted cloud storage, backed them up to the external drive in his glove compartment, and sent copies to his personal email. Documentation. Then he drove home. The house was dark when he arrived. Empty. Waiting. Patrick didn't turn on the lights. He sat at the kitchen table in the darkness and thought about foundations, about cracks, about the moment when you stopped trying to seal something and started preparing to rebuild. His father had died 5 years ago, sudden heart attack, gone before the ambulance arrived. But his lessons remained. You can love something and still let it go when it's broken beyond repair. That's not giving up. That's knowing when to save your strength for what comes next. At 11:43 p.m., headlights swept across the kitchen window. Cheryl's car in the driveway. Engine cutting off, door closing with a soft thump. Patrick sat, very still, watching her silhouette approach through the window in the door. The door opened. Cheryl froze when she saw him sitting there. Patrick, her voice carried artificial surprise. I didn't think you'd still be up. Happy anniversary, he said. The words hung between them like an accusation, which they were. Cheryl's face did something complicated in the shadows, guilt and fear and the rapid calculation of lies that might work. I texted you, she said, closing the door behind her. Didn't you get it? The project ran so late, and then... You're wearing the black dress. She looked down as if just noticing. This? I had to look professional for the presentation, and your wedding ring. Cheryl's hand moved to the ring instinctively, covering it. Patrick, what's going on? He slid his phone across the table. It spun in the darkness, screen glowing, displaying the first photo. Cheryl in front of Rossetti's, smiling, excited, ready for her evening. Cheryl's face drained of color. Even in the dim light, Patrick could see it happen. It's not what you think, she said, voice rising. We were just talking about work. The restaurant was convenient, and Patrick swiped to the next photo. The two of them at the table, leaning close, intimate. On our anniversary, he said, you planned a romantic dinner with another man. On the day we were supposed to celebrate 10 years. It wasn't romantic. It was just dinner. Don't. The single word cut through her attempts at explanation. Patrick stood, moving to the window, looking out at the lake. Behind him, he heard Cheryl crying. Soft, broken sounds that might have moved him a month ago. A week ago. Tonight, they sounded like soundtrack to a decision already made. I'm lonely, Patrick. Her voice shook. You're always so calm, so controlled. Nothing ever touches you. Trevor makes me feel alive. He makes me feel seen. I see you, Patrick said, still facing the window. I saw you lying for weeks. I saw you stop wearing a ring. I saw you choosing him tonight over us. It was one dinner. It was the moment you decided he was worth more than 10 years. Patrick turned to face her. It was the moment you proved the crack was real. Cheryl's tears had turned to anger now. You're always thinking in metaphors and calculations. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I need someone who actually feels things. I feel plenty. Then why are you so calm about this? Because I'm not going to argue with betrayal. Patrick picked up his phone, pocketing it. I'm just going to respond to it. What does that mean? It means I'm done. The words landed with finality. Cheryl stared at him, mascara streaking her face, wedding ring catching light from the window. Patrick, please. We can work on this. We can go to counseling. I'll stop talking to Trevor. No. You can't just give up on 10 years. I'm not giving up on 10 years. I'm acknowledging that you already did. Patrick moved toward the bedroom, but Cheryl grabbed his arm. Don't do this. Not like this. Let's talk in the morning when we're both calmer. I'm perfectly calm. That's the fucking problem. She was shouting now, voice breaking. You're always calm. Even now, even when I'm falling apart, you're just processing. Like I'm a problem to be solved instead of your wife. Patrick gently removed her hand from his arm. You stopped being my wife when you decided Trevor was worth lying to me. The rest is just paperwork. He walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and listened to her crying in the kitchen. The sound continued for a long time. Eventually, he heard her gather her keys, heard the front door open and close, heard her car start and drive away. Patrick sat on the edge of the bed in the darkness. His phone buzzed with a text message from Cheryl. Please don't do anything tonight. Let's talk tomorrow. He didn't respond. Instead, he opened his contacts and scrolled to his lawyer's number. Michael Brennan had handled the prenup, had helped Patrick set up the LLC that held the house, had been his college roommate and friend for 20 years. Patrick sent a text. Need to meet first thing tomorrow. Divorce. I'll explain then. The reply came within minutes. 8 a.m. my office. I'll have the papers ready. Patrick set his phone aside and lay back on the bed. Above him, the ceiling fan turned its endless circles. Outside, the lake breathed its cold breath. Inside, a marriage ended not with screaming or violence, but with the quiet certainty of someone who'd finally stopped patching cracks and started building something new. Michael Brennan's office sat above a coffee shop on Main Street, smelling perpetually of espresso and old law books. Patrick arrived at 7:55 a.m., exactly as planned, carrying a folder containing every photo, every bank statement, every piece of documentation he'd gathered. Michael looked exhausted when he opened the door, still holding his first coffee of the day. He'd clearly been at the office since early morning, preparing. Sit, Michael said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Tell me everything. Patrick did. No emotion, just facts. The timeline, the pattern of behavior, the anniversary dinner. He pulled out his phone and showed Michael the photos. Each one time-stamped, clear, undeniable. Michael studied them with a lawyer's clinical eye. Jesus, Patrick. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just help me end this cleanly. The prenup will hold. The house is protected. It was purchased before the marriage and held in your LLC. She has no claim to it, only to any appreciation in value during the marriage. Michael pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. Even that's minimal. The market's been relatively flat. What about the timeline? Wisconsin has a 6-month waiting period for divorce, but we can file immediately. Irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. With this evidence, we can push for fault-based grounds if needed, though it won't change the property division much given the prenup. I want it fast. I want it final. Michael nodded. I'll file this morning. You'll need to have her served. I'd recommend doing it at work, neutral territory, witnesses present. No, I'll handle notification myself. Patrick, I'll handle it. Michael sighed, but didn't argue. He'd known Patrick long enough to recognize immovable resolve. Okay, I'll have everything drawn up by end of day. You'll need to sign, then we serve her. Expect her to contest, to ask for counseling, to try to delay. She'll try. It won't work. Anything else I should know? Patrick was quiet for a moment, thinking. I've transferred all my premarital assets into accounts she doesn't have access to. The joint account has 6 months of basic expenses. She can have that. That's more than generous given the circumstances. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in closure. Michael made notes, his pen scratching across legal pads. What about the house? You planning to stay there? No, I'm selling it. Michael looked up, surprised. You love that house. I love what I thought my life was. Now it's just a building with memories I don't want. Market's decent right now. Lakefront property moves fast if you price it right. I'm not listing it. I have a buyer. Already. Remember Tom Henley? He's been asking about lakefront property for his daughter. Cash buyer. Close fast. Michael's eyebrows rose. How long have you been planning this? I'm not planning. I'm preparing for outcomes. Patrick, she's going to lose everything. The house, the marriage, her stability. That's what happens when you betray someone who gave you a decade of loyalty. Patrick's voice was flat, factual. I didn't create these consequences. She did. Michael leaned back in his chair, studying his friend. You're really not going to forgive her, are you? Would you? Probably not. But most people at least consider it. I'm not most people. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing documents, signing papers, building the legal framework for dissolution. Patrick read every word, asked clarifying questions, ensured he understood every clause and implication. By the time they finished, his signature decorated a dozen pages. It's official then, Michael said, gathering the papers into a folder. I'll file these this afternoon. You'll be served a copy for your records. Cheryl will be served within 48 hours. Thank you. Patrick. Michael caught him as he stood to leave. Are you okay? Really? I'm functional. That's all that matters right now. Patrick left the office and walked to the coffee shop below. He ordered black coffee and sat by the window, watching Cedar Ridge wake up for the day. The hardware store opened its doors. The bakery displayed fresh bread in its window. Life continued its patterns, indifferent to individual destruction. His phone buzzed with a text from Cheryl. Can we please talk? I miss you. Patrick deleted it without responding. Another text. I ended things with Trevor. It's over. It was a mistake. Delete. Patrick, please. I love you. He turned off his phone. The coffee burned going down, which felt appropriate. Everything was burning down. Marriage, home, the future they'd imagined. Patrick sat in the wreckage and felt nothing but the cold clarity of someone who'd made peace with necessary destruction. His father had told him once, during the foundation repair, the hard part isn't tearing out what's broken. That's just work. The hard part is accepting that sometimes you can't save what you built. Sometimes you have to let it fall and start over. Patrick was ready to start over. The court date arrived with the efficiency of legal machinery grinding forward. 3 weeks after filing, Patrick sat in a courthouse conference room across from Cheryl and her lawyer, a nervous young woman named Jessica who looked fresh out of law school. Cheryl had lost weight. Her face looked hollowed out, and she wouldn't meet his eyes. She wore a conservative navy suit and kept her hands folded on the table, wedding ring notably absent. The mediator, a patient woman in her 60s, reviewed the documents with practiced efficiency. Mr. Calder is seeking dissolution of marriage based on irretrievable breakdown. The prenuptial agreement is in effect. All premarital assets remain with their original owner. Joint assets accumulated during the marriage to be divided equitably. Jessica cleared her throat. Your Honor, my client requests that we explore reconciliation counseling before proceeding with. No, Patrick said. The mediator looked at him. Mr. Calder, in Wisconsin, the court generally encourages. The marriage is over. I'm not interested in counseling. Cheryl spoke for the first time, voice small. Patrick, please, just give us a chance to. You had chances, he said, finally looking at her. You chose not to take them. It was one mistake. It was a pattern of choices leading to betrayal. The mediator raised her hand, silencing them both. Let's review the asset division. The house at 2847 Lakeshore Drive was purchased by Mr. Calder prior to the marriage and held in an LLC. Per the prenuptial agreement, this remains his sole property. Cheryl's lawyer leaned forward. The house appreciated $40,000 during the marriage. My client is entitled to half of that appreciation. Michael Brennan, sitting beside Patrick, spoke calmly. The prenup explicitly states that appreciation is calculated at time of final decree. However, my client has sold the property. Closing occurred yesterday. The room went silent. Sold? Jessica looked confused. But we weren't notified of. The property belonged to Mr. Calder's LLC. He had no legal obligation to notify anyone. Cheryl was staring at Patrick now, face white. You sold our house. I sold my house. The LLC's house. The property protected by the prenup you signed. Where am I supposed to live? That's not my concern. Patrick, that's our home. That's where we built our life. You can't just. I can and I did. Tom Henley wanted lakefront property for his daughter. Cash offer. Closed fast. Cheryl turned to her lawyer, desperate. Can he do that? Can he just sell our house without telling me? Jessica looked sick. If the prenup. Let me review. She flipped through papers with shaking hands. The house is specifically listed as premarital property held in, oh God. Yes, he can sell it. The buyer takes possession next week, Michael added. Which means you have 7 days to remove your belongings, Mrs. Calder. 7 days. The number landed like a physical blow. Cheryl's breath caught, and for a moment Patrick thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just stared at him with something between horror and disbelief. You planned this, she whispered. I prepared for reality, Patrick corrected. You created the situation. I responded to it. I made one mistake. You made dozens of choices. Each lie, each hidden text, each moment you chose Trevor over us. Those were all choices. The anniversary dinner was just a choice I happened to witness. The mediator tapped her pen on her papers. Let's continue with the division of remaining assets. Joint checking account currently holds $4,200. Joint savings, $8,600. Retirement accounts. They spent the next hour dividing a decade into spreadsheets. The checking account split 50-50. The savings, same. Patrick's 401k stayed his, as did the retirement account he'd started before the marriage. Cheryl kept her car, her retirement fund from work, her personal belongings. When they finished, Patrick had lost approximately $12,000 in joint accounts and would owe Cheryl roughly $20,000 for the house appreciation. A total cost of $32,000 to end 10 years of marriage. He had paid 10 times that to be free. The waiting period is 6 months, the mediator said. Barring any complications, the divorce will be final in April. Mr. Calder, you're required to provide reasonable access for Mrs. Calder to collect her belongings from the residence. Mrs. Calder, you have 7 days from today to remove all personal items. Cheryl signed the papers with shaking hands. Patrick signed with the steady precision he brought to everything. When they stood to leave, she tried one last time. Patrick, wait. Please, can we just talk for 5 minutes? Everything that needed to be said was in those photos, he replied. And everything that needs to happen now is in these documents. I miss you. You missed the security you destroyed. That's not fair. Neither is planning a romantic dinner with another man on your wedding anniversary. He left her standing there in the courthouse hallway, watching him walk away. Michael caught up with him at the exit. That was brutal, Michael said quietly. That was fair. She's devastated. So was I when I saw her with him. I just processed it differently. They stood on the courthouse steps, cold November wind cutting through their coats. Cedar Ridge spread out below them, small and familiar and suddenly feeling temporary. What now? Michael asked. Now I deliver the move-out notice myself. Then I start figuring out what comes next. You gonna stay in Cedar Ridge? Patrick looked out at the town, at the lake visible in the distance, at the life he'd built that no longer fit. I don't know yet, but I'm not making decisions based on fear or anger. I'm making them based on what serves the life I want to build, which is one where the foundation is solid. Patrick drove to Cheryl's temporary apartment 3 days later. She'd been staying with a friend since the confrontation, but the friend was clearly reaching the end of her patience with a heartbroken guest who cried at unpredictable intervals. The apartment complex was generic, one of those places where young professionals and divorced people landed temporarily. Patrick parked and carried the envelope up to Unit 2B. Cheryl answered on the second knock. She looked worse than she had in court. Hair unwashed, sweatpants, no makeup. Behind her, the apartment was chaos. Boxes half-packed, clothes piled on furniture, the kind of mess that happened when someone's life fell apart faster than they could organize it. "Patrick," she said, surprise and hope mixing in her voice. "Did you come to? I came to give you this." He held out the envelope. "Official notice. 7 days to collect your belongings from the house. After that, anything remaining becomes property of the new owner." The hope died in her eyes. She took the envelope but didn't open it. 7 days. Yes, that's not enough time. It's what the buyer agreed to. You should start packing. Cheryl laughed, hollow and broken. Start packing, right? Pack up 10 years of my life into boxes in 7 days. Very reasonable. You'll figure it out. Will I? She leaned against the doorframe, looking exhausted. Trevor won't return my calls. My parents are ashamed of me. My friends are sick of hearing me cry. And you're standing here like I'm a stranger you need to deal with efficiently. You made yourself a stranger when you chose secrecy over honesty. I made a mistake, Patrick. One stupid mistake. Don't I get a chance to? You got chances. Every morning you woke up next to me and chose to keep lying was a chance. You didn't take them. Cheryl's face crumpled. I still love you. No, you don't. You love the stability I provided. You love the idea of not being the woman who destroyed her marriage. You love not having to face consequences. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have spent October 17th at a romantic dinner with another man. You're never going to forgive me, are you? Forgiveness requires trust. You shattered that. Patrick turned to leave, but Cheryl grabbed his arm. Her grip was desperate, fingernails digging in slightly. "Please, just tell me what I can do. Tell me how to fix this." "You can't fix it. Some things, once broken, don't go back together. You just replace them." "I'm not a broken appliance." "No, you're a person who made choices that ended a marriage. Now you live with those choices." He pulled his arm free gently and walked back to his truck. Behind him, he heard the apartment door slam. Through the window, he could see Cheryl standing inside, envelope still clutched in her hand, shoulders shaking with sobs. Patrick felt no satisfaction, no joy in her pain, just the cold confirmation that he'd done what needed to be done. He drove home, to the house that would soon belong to someone else, and began his own packing. Not because he needed 7 days, but because systems required completion. Each room got sorted methodically. Keep, donate, trash. The process was meditative, almost peaceful. In the bedroom, he found a shoebox of photos. Their wedding, smiling and young and believing in forever. Vacations to places that had seemed important at the time. Holidays with families who'd now have to pick sides. He almost threw them out, but something stopped him. Not sentiment, not hope, just the acknowledgement that these moments had been real, even if what came after destroyed them. Patrick packed the photos in a box labeled Archive and moved on. The final night in the house arrived faster than expected. 6 days of packing, organizing, and closing chapters. Cheryl had come the day before with a moving truck and 3 friends who wouldn't meet Patrick's eyes. They'd loaded furniture, clothes, kitchen items, bathroom supplies. The marriage dissolved into boxes and loading ramps. Patrick had stayed in the garage during the move, giving her space but remaining present to ensure the process stayed orderly. When they finished, Cheryl had stood in the empty living room, looking lost. "The couch," she'd asked. "We bought it together. It's yours. Take it. But we picked it out together. For movie nights, and..." "Cheryl, take the couch." She had, along with the dining table, the bedroom set, most of the kitchen supplies. Patrick kept what he needed, his tools, his books, his laptop, clothes. The essentials. Everything else was just weight. Now, on his final night, the house echoed with emptiness. Patrick walked through each room slowly, saying goodbye to a life that no longer fit. The living room where they'd hosted dinners and game nights. The kitchen where they'd cooked together on Sunday mornings. The bedroom where they'd made love and made plans and made the mistake of thinking tomorrow was guaranteed. In the office, Patrick paused. The desk remained, too heavy for Cheryl to move alone. He'd leave it for Tom's daughter, along with a note explaining which drawer stuck and how to fix it. He ended his tour on the back deck, looking out at the lake. November had stripped the trees bare, leaving the view unobstructed. Water, sky, horizon. Simple geometry. Honest. Patrick sat on the steps, feeling cold wood beneath him, and thought about his father's foundation. The crack they'd found. The decision to tear out and rebuild rather than patch and pray. He'd done the same thing here. Torn out what was broken. Soon, someone else would build something new on this foundation. Maybe it would last longer. Maybe they'd take better care of it. Goodbye, Patrick said to the house, to the lake, to the decade that ended here. Then he stood, walked inside, locked the doors, and drove away. Patrick took a room at a small inn on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just clean sheets and quiet walls while he figured out what came next. For the first time in months, he slept deeply, dreamlessly, the sleep of someone who'd completed difficult work. Morning came with pale sunlight through cheap curtains. Patrick made instant coffee in the room's tiny kitchenette and checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Cheryl, all from late last night. 2 voicemails. He didn't listen to them. Instead, he called Tom Henley. Patrick. Tom's voice boomed with characteristic enthusiasm. How's it feel to close that chapter? Relieving. Your daughter's going to love the place. She's thrilled. Already planning renovations. Kids these days always wanting to change things. Tom paused. You doing okay? Divorce is hell, even when it's necessary. I'm functional. That's the Calder way, isn't it? Stay functional until you figure out how to thrive again. Tom cleared his throat. Listen, I know this is fast, but I'm expanding the business. Opening a branch in Duluth. Need someone who understands construction, knows how to manage projects, doesn't fall apart when things get complicated. Interested, Patrick looked around the small inn room. Everything he owned fit in his truck. Nothing tied him to Cedar Ridge anymore. The job, the house, the marriage all severed. Free. I'll think about it, he said. Good. Take your time. Offer stands whenever you're ready. After they hung up, Patrick drove to the one place that had never disappointed him. The public access point on the lake, the same spot where his father had taught him to fish, where he'd proposed to Cheryl, where every major moment in his life had somehow circled back to water. He parked and walked to the edge, looking out at the gray expanse. Ice was forming at the edges, winter claiming the lake inch by inch. By January, it would be solid. People would drive trucks on it, drill holes for fishing, trust the ice to hold them. Patrick understood that trust. You tested it. You respected it. And when it cracked, you got off immediately. His phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Papers filed. You're officially separated. 6 months to final decree. Congratulations. Patrick typed back. Thank you for everything. Another text appeared, this one from Cheryl's number. I know you won't read this, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I destroyed the best thing in my life, and I don't know how to live with that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Patrick read it twice. Then he deleted it and blocked her number. Some people thought that was cruel. Patrick called it necessary. Cheryl needed to process her choices without hoping he'd soften. He needed to build his future without her pain pulling him backward. They were done. Officially, legally, emotionally. Done. Patrick stood by the lake for a long time, watching light change on water, feeling cold wind bite his face. He thought about Duluth, about new beginnings, about foundations he hadn't built yet, but could. His father's voice came to him one last time. The lake doesn't lie, boy. It shows you exactly what you bring to it. Calm or storm, clear or murky, it just reflects back. Patrick looked at his reflection in the water. Tired but steady. Hurt but functional. Changed but not destroyed. He could work with that. Turning away from the lake, Patrick walked back to his truck. He had calls to make, decisions to finalize, a future to construct. The past was boxed and archived. The present was temporary rooms and instant coffee. But the future? The future was unwritten, and for the first time in months, that felt like possibility instead of threat. Patrick drove away from the lake, from Cedar Ridge, from the man he'd been when he'd trusted too easily. Behind him, the water kept breathing its cold breath, indifferent and honest. Exactly as it should be.